I understand how you do. There's a woman who needs my help.
Did you learn something from her?
No. You remember when I said that I have a job that is bigger than my plate? There is a woman who has had much pain in her life. And she was a problem. I helped her.
Is she a friend?
She is now. And I have chosen her and others and more soon to join me in traveling.
Do they know you?
Nothing.
But what if they don't like you?
Many won't. This is my reason for being here.
I still don't understand. What is your reason for being here?
I'm telling you this because even though you are children, the elders in your life have lived longer, many times, adults need the faith of children. And if you hold out to this faith, really tight, someday soon, you will understand all what I am saying to you. But you ask an important question on here. What is my reason for being here? And the answer is for all of you. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me. He has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovery of sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor.
Sin.
I said, I have loved spending this time with you. You are all so very special. And now, at my next children's, ask the same questions you do, and let they listen to my answers. But I suspect they will not have the understanding of you. And I hope, like when the time comes, they will tell others about you, like you have.
All right, we're all keeping up on the Chosen. If you need a reminder, it's an app on your phone, or if you have a smart TV, or you can go to YouTube. Buy the DVDs. They have a website. It's all free. Go to it. It's great. It's awesome, and you can get the message that my messages aren't exclusively on that. They just follow the theme. And in this, I wanted to do a larger section of his teaching from Jesus, but it was like 8 minutes long when he's sitting with these kids. But in this third episode, he's sitting with kids, and it's actually just Abigail, the girl that's sitting in the white. It's just her at first, but she tells all these other kids about it, and these basically become like his first students, which is it's maybe not quite as significant as we may realize, but his words resonated with me a lot. That sometimes adults need the faith of children, and I think it's absolutely true because there is no faith like children. And I think that our faith oftentimes just comes from an unconditional love. When you really get down to it, they believe in everything that you tell them or adults tell them, because perhaps part of it's because it's what they've known, but even if you introduce something new to them, they have this different type of love or respect for their teachers, for their parents, for Well, yeah, teachers. I was thinking Sunday school teachers, and my mind went to like teachers at school. Still teachers, right? But I think it fits well with Valentine's Day. Valentine's the day of love, right? Saint Valentinus I guess is his name, a martyr from the 3rd century church. And he's credited to be the patron of love. And there are some kind of like folklore surrounding Saint Valentinus. I don't know if any of it's actually true or not, but he seemed to have love was a very important part of his teaching, including the sacrament of marriage. It was not uncommon for the apostles, which, if you didn't know, apostle means the sent one, that the apostles that followed John, like the book of John, if you read the book of John, you find that it's just saturated with love, the love that God has for us, the love Christ has for us, and what love can do, will do, and how perfect love is through Christ. And so a lot of the first few centuries, apostolic succession was really important. So you had to be able to track your teachers all the way back to Jesus. And so I don't know about St. Valentinus, but I would be willing to wager, if I bet money, that he would be able to trace his, I'm going to put it, apostolicity back to John, because that was John's major focus and the way he viewed the world. But this is that day of love, and love is much greater than passion, right? Love is much greater than passion. It's actions. And like for John, it's how he's seen the world, and when we get John's writing, we hear I hope that you hear it a lot. Just the small verse that says, God is love. Now, it doesn't mean that God is just theoretical or a personification of love, but that love is how God is revealed in this world, especially through Christ Jesus, who came as a human to exemplify what exactly love looks like for us here now today. But I kind of wanted to jump in this a little bit more. So Matthew 18 is actually Jesus talking about children, right? We're seeing his first students, as far as we know anyways. And he's teaching them. He says, you will understand a lot more than many others will. And sometimes adults see the faith of children. He's teaching them things that they're going to later understand, but it has a bigger impact later on in their life, right? They're going to be able to, as they get older, they're the next generation. And we see that the same philosophy that Jesus is teaching these kids is what we hold in this church here. Almost all of us are here because our kids started coming first. And most of them were because of 1 or 2 kids, actually. And in this story, it was Abigail brought all of these other friends. And that's actually how the last couple of years have been. And so, I don't even know my own verses here, 18, not 13. So, but we always have this little philosophy here that children are the church of today. To go on with children are the leaders of tomorrow, but we won't have any godly leaders who lead with the sacrifice and love if they aren't the church today. Make sense? Right? But truly, Jesus was onto something here. Okay, so, verses 1 through 5, Jesus says, at that time the disciples came to Jesus asking, who then is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? They're comparing each other. They're talking about each other in this text here. They're kind of bickering about who is the greatest disciple, right? So he's asking who's the greatest in the kingdom, and he called a little child to him and placed the child among them. And he said, truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one such child in a name welcomes me. Jesus' desire for us and for his disciples was to become humble. And to live life as seeing ourselves almost subservient to others. And Jesus gave us that example. We talked about that not too long ago. Jesus was washing the feet of his disciples, right? They said, "You are the teacher. You're Messiah. You can't be doing the work of a slave." He says, "No, this is the example I've given to you. Now you need to do it to others." Unless you become like these children, not just here and there and in opportune moments in our life, but this is how you ought to become. To humble ourselves to this lowly position, such as that of a child. And in the grander scheme of society, children tend not to, they're seen as the future, not the today. And Jesus is trying to make this point and bring this out to the children and to even his disciples that, no, you don't get what I'm doing here. I'm bringing the lowly up. The world's getting flipped upside down. The poor are the richest. The ones who are the most hurt, from whether it's physical, emotional, they're the most righteous. This is where Jesus is saying that the children, the smallest, the least who contribute to society are the most important. The most important. And so we come to Matthew 22. A couple pages. We're kind of depart from that a little bit. But we're going to go to Jesus because he makes some point about who he is. And he hasn't really revealed it yet so far for following along in the series. He hasn't really revealed who he was, but we kind of know because we know the story. We get the privilege of reading it before the show came out. But he hasn't really made himself known to people at this point yet. But it's starting to. He's kind of keeping his circle small, and he's just beginning his ministry. So that's what he talks about. He went, he helped this woman, and she is now a friend of his, and she's going to follow him, but it's just not quite the time. So follow along with me as we kind of break this down a little bit further, or start to, I guess, build upon that, I should say. Verse 34. Hearing that, Jesus had silenced the Sadducees. So the Sadducees, little context, the Sadducees had just questioned him about marriage in the resurrection. And he basically shuts them down because he says, I'm not even going to answer you because you don't understand what I'm talking about. He's like, there is no marriage, like angels. He goes into this telling of what it's like, but he's basically being kind of facetious in his answer because they don't even believe in the resurrection, or they've never studied it, or care about it, or anything. So he kind of points that to the end. He's like, you're in error because you don't even know Scripture and the power of God. So he says all of that and says, don't even bother. He answers their question by basically saying, you won't understand the answer anyways. And so he kind of silenced them. And so hearing this, Jesus had silenced the Sadducees. The Pharisees got together. One of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this very question. It says, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment of the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. All the law of the prophets hang on these two commandments. All the law of the prophets, they had a huge book of laws, just like we do today. But for them, their laws were built on a theocracy, a government of God. God gave all of these instructions to them, and they started building more and more and more and more laws until it got to a ridiculous point, which Jesus points out throughout his life that these laws were becoming ridiculous. But they all hang on these two commandments, to love God and to love others. We just keep it that simple. It's to love God, to love others. And I think this is why it's so important for us to remember the faith of children, because children have a tendency to love to a much greater capacity than any of us. When we grow up, we start getting callous towards life. We start running into bad experiences. with bad people or bad experience with people who just had a bad reaction to situations. Right? We kind of become maybe a little bit disenfranchised, disheartened, or lose a little bit of hope in humanity in a way as we get older. We start wanting to see the world as it is at face value rather than at what God intends for it to be and the direction He's taking us. That may or may not have been a part of my original sermon or a rabbit trail. Either way, love, the emphasis today, on Valentine's Day. Love the Lord your God. Just before this scene, if you've seen episode 3, he talks about this very quote. He has the kids actually recite it. He talks about how important this is. So, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength. Well, what does that mean? What does it mean to love God with all your heart? Heart is something that is not about feelings. Because if any of us know a whole lot, love does not really have to do with feelings. That's infatuation. Love is more of an action. Right? We can be really mad at somebody but still love them. Right? So it's got to go beyond just feelings. So when we're talking about heart, we're not talking about like all this mushy-gushy, lovey-dovey stuff, right? This is how we want to view heart. When I was in the Marines, when I was young, I could run. Somebody would look at me like, when you were young? But when I was much younger than I am now, relative to how young I am, I could put my body through the test in ways I can't do now, which I'm sure you can relate with. But then as I got higher in rank, I still had to perform, but it got much harder. I couldn't outwork a bad diet. And it seemed like no matter how hard I pushed myself running or how often I ran, I could not get my 3-mile run time up. I couldn't do it. I was like, and as I got older, I started following, the time started increasing. It got higher and higher. And thankfully, our point system was based on age. So the older you got, the slower you could run it and get the same amount of points. So it worked out great, right? Police department does the same thing. When I was in some of the worst shape of my life, was one of the last years. I think it actually might have been the last year of my Marine Corps career. I was in terrible shape. And we went to Bridgeport, California, so we're like, our base camp is at 10,000, and we're going to hike up to like 14,000, and we had no acclimatization. I'm from Iowa, where we sit like at 1,000 elevation. So I don't even like getting up to go eat, because I feel like I'm going to die. It was hard in that elevation. So we took everything we had ever been issued, plus like 2 weeks worth of food, carrying like 180 pounds in our packs, to go on our little 2-week excursion in the mountains. It was not fun. But what I found was, even though some of these kids that are like just out of boot camp, just out of schooling, they're like in phenomenal shape. They're like running 3 miles in like 18 minutes. I'm struggling to get 28 minutes. I'm usually picking them up off the floor. I'm grabbing their weapon or their pack so they can just pick themselves up halfway through this march, because they just can't do it. And I'm trying to think to myself, how is it that I can be, at the time, so fat and out of shape, that I can make this hike and keep up with them? And I actually have to pick some of them up. It's because the longer I went in the Marines, the longer I went through these hikes and these conditionings, the harder it got to actually keep up. But I also picked up rank. And I picked up responsibility. And I had a commitment and a determination about me that some of the younger guys did. I'm just going to muscle through this. I'm invincible. I'm on top of the world. I was smarter than that. I knew I wasn't. But I was determined. I had a heart. And that became more important the older guys. We had the higher ranking guys were usually the ones who were in the worst shape, but never fell out of hikes. There's always the younger ones. Because when their bodies failed them, and they felt like their bodies were failing them, it was over. But the older guys knew their bodies were going to fail them long before the younger guys. But they had a heart to force their bodies beyond that point. And so this is heart. Heart is this discipline, this courage, this commitment, this sense of being and identity deep down inside of you that says, this is who I am. It's that drive that pushes you and motivates you. So when you love the Lord with all your heart, it's this drive that's deep inside of you. There's this passion to follow God no matter what. No matter what. It's like St. Valentinus, who becomes a martyr. He's killed for his faith. No matter what, he was not going to compromise his faith. Even if it meant breaking his body and losing his life. To love the Lord with all your soul. Don't get confused in thinking that our soul is something detached from our bodies. Because we'll get to that. But the soul has more to do with our non-physical side. And the side of us, of who we are, that you can't look, see, touch, feel. Some people might call it like your conscience, your personality, the things that make you tick, the things that you love. Like you can't explain why you love Ichiban other than the fact that it tastes good. But there's more to it, right? There's an environment. There's an essence. You can't explain fully why you like the church. People are nice. Music's okay. There's nothing you really love. You know what I mean? Like there's not just that one thing that's just so great that's the reason you come. In fact, if I was honest, when I started coming to church, I came to church because I realized it was so full of broken people. Even when it was full of hypocrites, I realized, oh good, there's room for me. Not that I felt like I was a hypocrite. I eventually learned that pretty much everybody is a hypocrite at some point to some degree. And it's something we work on. But I realized what I love about church so much is that we get together for a common cause and nothing is perfect. And I realized that maybe that's what makes it perfect. That makes sense? But anyways, the soul is about nurturing our faith. It's about nurturing the things that we value, that we hold inside of us that are unseen. You know, if we want to define faith, and as it says in Scripture, as the belief or the conviction of things unseen, that they are true. This is the part of us, our soul, part of us that we must nurture. This is our Bible studies, our devotions. This is about paying attention to what kind of liturgies in life. What are we filling our lives with? Are they edifying? Do they build us up and make us better? Does the music we listen to make us better? Is what we watch, does that make us better? Does it improve us? And how are we loving God in these aspects of life? To nurture who we are as a person. Our mind. Love the Lord our God with all our mind. This is getting to know Him. How well do you know Scripture? What are you reading to strengthen yourself? To strengthen your mind? To grow? If you aren't growing, you're dying. There isn't really a stagnant point. If you aren't getting better, you're getting worse. You got to go one way or the other. Life is kind of this uphill battle. So if you aren't marching on, you're rolling down. That's the way it is. So what are you doing to strengthen and to grow your mind? And how do you love God through that? Think about that. Think about what it is that we're learning. Does it honor and glorify God in those things? And Matthew doesn't have it in here. But we oftentimes will read a parallel verse that says, love the Lord your God with all your strength as well. And this would be our physical bodies. God gives our bodies. Put Adam and Eve in the garden and said, it was very good. Right? It's a part of who we are. Jesus' body was broken, bruised, bloodied, and buried for us, for our sake. For our sake. Our bodies are not independent or separate as totally corrupt and worthless. God cares about the body He gave you. Otherwise, why give it to you? Right? And if we're going to be reconciled to Him, if we're going to love Him, we got to love Him with all aspects of our being, including our bodies. We in the Western cultures, especially like America, are not very good at this. We're not very good at taking care of our bodies. Paul actually talks about it in 1 Corinthians. He talks about how our bodies were paid for with a price, and we ought to honor our bodies. In that context, he's actually talking specifically sexually, but all aspects of it. The point still remains, no matter what it is, we must take care of our bodies. So think about this: heart, mind, soul, strength. Right? That's all a combination of who we are. We're not like a body and a soul. They're two separate things. They are one. They all make up who we are. So think of like buying a car. Right? If there's four aspects of the wheels, without the wheels in the car, none of it matters. You want to go in nowhere. If you have a car without a wheel on it, you need to take it back. You have been gypped. It's not going in right. You need the four wheels to drive the car. It's what's going to get you from where you are to where you need to be. It's going to carry you down the road of righteousness to get you there. If you have one aspect that is low on air, if you're running flat, you're going to risk one having to blow out on that tire. Not only that, but it also affects all the other tires. Because they're all spinning the same. If you've ever had an all-wheel drive car and one tire was different, I had this. It would burn up all the oil in your transfer case, and it can completely seize up all your tires. Your tires are not all rotating the same. It will create different wear patterns because of drag and other very, very microscopic effects that build up over time. Getting through life is harder because you've got to muscle. Even if it's just a little bit, even if it's just a little bit out of alignment because that one tire is low, it's going to have a little bit more drag. It's going to pull you a little bit more. So you got to kind of try to keep yourself straight on that road. That can be exhausting. It can get tiring over a long period of time to drive when something's out of balance. And of course, you can risk having a blowout in which the entire car derails right off the road. We need to take care of all four: our heart, our mind, our soul, and our bodies. But if we take it as not a selfish approach, if we realize that these are gifts from God, there's a way that we can love God through them. We show our love into the world by how we tend to what God has given us, to who we are. Because who we are has an impact on everybody else around us, right? That's where our soul really has an impact. And then secondly, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. And this is where Jesus kind of like, I need to scratch that one there. And he does in John 13. Follow me to John 13 real quick. 31 to 36. Jesus said, when he was gone, Jesus said, now the Son of Man is glorified and God is glorified in him. If God is glorified in him, God will glorify the Son in himself and will glorify him at once. My children. He calls them his children at this point, right? His disciples, followers. Not long ago, in his journey, he had said, truly, you need to eat my flesh and drink my blood if you want to follow me. And everybody's like, well, this is weird. I'm out. And the only people left were his disciples. Now, we get what this means. That was kind of I don't know if metaphor is the right word, but it was very symbolic, not literal. But these were the ones who stuck around. These are the ones who were with him to the end no matter what. You will look for me, and just as I told the Jews, I will tell you now. Where I am going, you cannot come. A new command I give you. Love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. I don't think I meant to end with a question there. But he does say, well, yeah, verse 36, we'll continue on. Simon Peter asked him, Lord, where are you going? And Jesus replied, where I'm going you cannot follow now, but you will later. Now he says you will later after giving them a command, this new command, to love others, to love each other as I have loved you. Not only did he care for them for their food and their spiritual concerns, but remember how he washed their feet, how he teaches them. He dies for them. And that's the example he's given us to love others. And this is why Jesus came. When he's teaching the children in this video, and he said, well, what is your purpose? And he said, remember I told you my purpose is much bigger than my trade. You're not defined by what you do in this life. Your job, how you contribute to society. He said, my purpose is much bigger than that. It's for all of you. And he leaves, he says, I'm going to leave, but you'll come back to me later. Where I'm going, you'll be able to come later. And this is how you're to live. By loving God with every part of your being, and loving others as I have loved you. That sacrificial love seen on the cross. He says, you have great understanding, and I've loved being with you and teaching you. You ask great questions, and I hope that my students after you will ask great questions as well. I hope they are as good students as you. You're those next students. You are the next disciples that he was talking about. And so are the children up there. So I wonder, is our faith as strong as the children upstairs? Is our love as deep as theirs? Are we becoming like them in humility? Or are we as good of students as they are? Willing to soak in all that Christ is willing to teach us. Willing to take in all that he was willing to give us. That's just the question he raised. That's just the question it is. That's the question for you to ponder. What does that mean? What does it mean to love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength? How are you not doing it now? And how are we not loving others the way he's loved us? Let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this word today, that we could just be encouraged as we go out this day, this Valentine's Day, to remember that Saint Valentinus was a man of God, a man who followed Christ with all his heart, mind, soul, and strength. He not only knew of your word, of your letters, of your might, of your power, of your saving grace, but he lived it out in his life by loving others. And all of that, but teaching others about love and how important and powerful love is in this world. And Lord, that love that you instilled in him, he took to his very heart. And he gave up himself for it. And this is what Valentine's Day is, giving up ourselves sacrificially to demonstrate our love to another. And Lord, we pray that as we go out this day, this week, that we're transformed by it, not just for the day, not just for this week, but for the rest of our lives, Lord, that you would just impact us with your great love, your amazing love, that sets the captive free, that makes the poor rich, that makes the children powerful. Lord, just give us a new heart today, a heart that longs after yours, so that we may love everybody. We may love others. as you have loved us. And it's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen.